I am thankful to the speaker. He is able to create a good image among the students because students are really looking for interacting with the industrialists, industry executives. Thereby, they want to learn and understand how things are happening on the ground. Today's executive is from Finland. I am very happy. And on behalf of Pondicherry University, we formally extend a formal invitation, formal welcome to you, and hope to listen to a great lecture from you. Thank you.
May I now request Professor Lalita Ramakrishnan Madam to felicitate the gathering. Please, Madam.
A very good afternoon to all of you and good morning to Mr. Aditya Pratap Alur from Finland. Coming together is beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success. This is mentioned by Henry Ford, the great businessman. And he also said, if everyone is moving forward together, then success takes care of itself. The series of events that we have been planning and organizing from the Department of International Business is the success of our students. And our students have been working very hard at the back end and front end to see that, we have to conduct so many seminars online. So we have been very fortunate. Perhaps COVID has blessed with so many online events, especially our resource persons have been kind enough, despite their busy online schedules, they have been kind enough to help us gain knowledge and also enrich our students with their expertise by accepting to be our resource persons from different countries across the globe. Mr. Aditya Pratap Alur has been very kind to immediately accept our invitation, and his exposure to international marketing is going to bring colors to this program. So I now request the student committee to take over. Thank you all for joining us.
May I now kindly request Mr. Akash Kumar introduce the guest of honor, Mr. Aditya Alur. Please, Akash.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Sri Aditya Alur, Head of Marketing for Europe, Asia, Oceania at Huhtamäki Packaging Oyj, Finland, and our invited speaker today, who is going to talk to us about the implications of COVID-19 on key consumption megatrends in developed markets. This is a subject in which we should all be deeply interested because we all know that there is no sector left which has not been affected with this pandemic. And we, being the management students, need to understand how we can contribute for the revival. Sri Aditya Alur spent almost his entire career in this area, having an experience of around 14 years in the functional area of marketing, where he has made his major contributions to big names in the world like Nokia and Microsoft. His career started flourishing after the completion of PGDM from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta in 2006, soon after which he got into Nokia as management trainee sales officer. In a span of 8 years with Nokia, he has been designated as area sales manager in Nokia India Private Limited, training manager and customer marketing manager of Nokia Oyj, Finland. In 2011, he became manager, sales and technology, marketing, mobile phones, product marketing, and in the span of 2 years, he got promoted as senior manager. After the acquisition of Nokia by Microsoft, he continued with the same designation with Microsoft, where he was one of the senior member behind Nokia 10 ranges. In 2016, he moved to Dotely, a company focusing on digital health solutions, where he was marketing lead. Currently, he is with Huhtamäki Packaging Oyj, the global leader in food and drinks packaging, as marketing manager, food service business unit, Europe, Asia Pacific and Oceania, which includes Australasia, Melanesia, Micronesia, Polynesia. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Aditya Alur. Please, sir, enlighten us with your vast experience and knowledge of international marketing.
Okay, very good afternoon to all of you. I would first like to thank your Dean, Professor Chandrasekhar Rao sir, your Head of Department, Professor M. Bhanumati Madam, and most importantly, Professor Lalita Madam, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share some insights with all of you. Special thanks also to the other members of faculty. I've also noticed that some people from other these schools have dialed in today. Thank you for joining in to listen to me. A special note of thanks to Kashyap, Rakesh, Akash and Priyanka for facilitating the meeting today, the introduction, and also helping with various aspects of the session today. Today, I will try to give you all a view into the kind of impact the current pandemic has had on businesses and consumers in the world. Just a very short note in addition to the introduction that was already given. One of the things that I also like doing, apart from, of course, working and my day job, is spending time with my family. I live in Finland, as mentioned earlier, and we have a 6-year-old son, a 2-year-old beagle, and we spend a lot of time in Finnish nature. Finland is a country of lakes, and we really love exploring the outdoors as well. For the discussion today, I plan to cover the following topics and key messages. Okay? We will first start off looking at how the year 2020 was supposed to be, and what we thought it would look like, what it would be like. We will then look at how certain aspects were before COVID-19 outbreak and how things changed after the outbreak. So we will look at the key class of consumers, the Millennials and Generation Z, and see what shifts in their behaviors and their patterns of consumption will take place as a result of this pandemic. And what impact would that have on the mega trends that define the industry and that run the industry. Okay. I will then try to share some examples of how major companies have responded to this crisis, what they're doing to try to keep business continuity and also try to address concerns of their customers across Europe and also some other countries in the world. The focus would be more on developed markets, as pointed out earlier. So pardon me if I don't talk too much about the Indian context over here. Right. So let us first go back to the start. About 6 months back, the entire world was a very, very different place. I'm sure all of you will agree. We were looking forward to the start of the new decade. The world was worried about climate change, about 2020 being the hottest year ever. And there were a lot of predictions made about the economy. A lot of analysts, a lot of industry people said a lot of things about how the world would be, how businesses would be in the year 2020. And there was also a lot of importance assigned to this year because this also happens to be the presidential election year for the United States of America, which is usually a global defining moment. People, on the other hand, had a lot of plans. They were looking forward to a lot of things. Many consumers and people, travelers all over the world were looking forward to the Tokyo Olympics, the Euro Cup football tournament. There were a lot of big Hollywood, Bollywood releases lined up. Movie lovers like me were looking forward to the new James Bond movie. There was a lot that people thought they will do in 2020. Indians, of course, were looking forward to the T20 World Cup as well. And we know what happened later. We can, of course, plan and look forward to a lot of events, but then best plans are dictated by conditions not in our control. A lot of analysis, predictions, and forecasting said a lot of things about the economy and how the world would be in 2020. What did they say? They said that global economy will pick up in 2020 with an annual real growth of 3.2%, with emerging economies like Asian markets and African markets actually contributing a 4.3% real growth. They said that consumer confidence would be above average, meaning that people would be happy to spend money, people would be happy to consume more, especially because there were these big events like the Olympics, like the UEFA Euro Cup tournament. So all these are usually seen as events where consumption of various services, products go up. A lot of brands, a lot of businesses had already lined up their marketing budgets and their promotion campaigns around these big events. There was a World Cup budget, there was an Olympics budget, there was a Euro Cup marketing budget. So a lot was actually planned. And there were supposed to be strong labor markets in key advanced economies. Like I said that there would be growth. Growth is a very interesting word for us to listen to now, but believe it or not, 6 months back, that is how the graphs actually looked as per the analysts. And as we all know, what happened after that was, the world had a surprise waiting for all of us. Such a sudden surprising event is usually called a black swan event. We might as well call it a black bat event, given that the virus originated from a bat. So the world was hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, and now the world will never actually remain the same. We looked at the forecast for the economy before the COVID-19 pandemic, and a lot of analysts, a lot of predictions were made. But what are people actually saying now? The language and the words have changed a lot in 6 months. Analysts now say this is the deepest recession the world will see since the 1930s. The worst case scenarios actually show global economy contracting by 8 to 11%. Just to give you an idea of what that means, 10% of the global economy means the entire economy of India and Japan put together just being wiped out. Or the entire economy of Germany, UK, and France, 3 countries that run and they drive Europe, these 3 countries just being removed from the globe. Or almost half of the US economy just being wiped out from the planet. So this is actually a devastating impact. Supply and demand sides of the economy have been severely impacted, and there is now large-scale unemployment across countries. And there is also long-lasting changes coming into consumer behavior, which we will look into in detail. What exactly is, driving these changes? Why should a pandemic impact the global economy so badly? So I'll try to very quickly give you an idea about, in a simplistic way of looking at how the immediate impact would be. So what do we know has happened? We know that a pandemic has struck almost all the countries in the world. So what is the first reaction that governments across the world do to contain the pandemic? They enforce a lockdown, they start testing people, they start tracing where people are, they put people into quarantine and self-isolation, and they close down public spaces. What does this mean? What this means is that because of these steps, there is a change in the way in the demand for goods. People immediately react by stockpiling a lot of products. Stockpiling means consumption suddenly increases for certain things which people and businesses never really predicted. Followed by that immediate stockpiling, there is almost an immediate shortage. People start buying online a lot more rather than going into shops. Social distancing means people don't go to public places like restaurants, like movie theaters, which means consumption further goes down. And more importantly, the unemployment and the uncertainty that the world has actually means that people start spending much less money. They become much more cautious in spending. They start traveling lesser. So a lot of problems fall into the supply side as well. What happens to the supply side? Well, because people cannot, the workers cannot come into factories, there are a lot of factory shutdowns to ensure worker safety. The stockpiling means there is a shortage of essentials. The shortage of essentials has an impact on supply chains, and raw materials also become lesser in number. And overall, because of the cautious spending, not just by people, but also by businesses, there is a drop in investments and there's reduced productivity. All of this has, a cyclical effect, further pulling down economies of each country, and in a net effect, also the economies of the world. Let us try and summarize some of those after effects. Some key after effects actually include that United States of America, the most powerful country arguably on the planet today, it is looking at its deepest recession ever in their history. They've already lost 26 million jobs between March and April, and millions more have actually been rendered jobless in the USA. The world's factory, China, will actually see its economy stagnate. The Eurozone will be the worst hit regions globally because there were problems that already existed in the world, like there were rising debt levels, aging populations, contracting economies, and Europe was actually straddled with these problems even before the COVID pandemic hit the world. UK, which is also a very powerful economy, is actually looking at double disaster because this is the year they were supposed to exit the European Union with Brexit. So people, who are talking about trade wars, who are talking about what would be the trade deal for Brexit, the whole conversation has actually shifted. Right now, it is more about survival. So UK also is looking at large-scale unemployment, drastic drop in investments, and consumption. Let us now try to understand things from the viewpoint of the consumers. Okay, the key consumer classes that actually matter for pretty much all businesses today are two groups of consumers. Who are they? They are millennials and Generation Z. And pretty much every company worth its salt, in one way or the other, strategizes to ensure that they get the attention and the consumption from these groups of consumers. Who are the millennials and Generation Z? First up, the millennials are typically people who were born between 1981 to 1996. I'm lucky to still call myself a millennial. I fall in that age bracket. And the Generation Z are much younger people. They are those people who were born after 1997. What is typical of people of these age groups? First up, the millennials are extremely technology savvy. They grew up using technology. The Generation Z, in fact, grew up probably because of technology. Many of the parents might have actually met because of technology, and then they've actually they are real digital natives. They are people who actually know the world in a very different way. People of both these age groups are heavily opinionated. They believe in causes. They believe in caring for the planet and the society. And also they're very pragmatic people who would like to be very careful about how they spend their money, what actually it means for them, and what value it drives for them. But if you look at these certain, this particular class of people, what has also defined them is that they have existed through three big crisis points in the world. First, most of the millennials have actually seen the 2001 terrorist attacks that were unleashed on the US soil. And the 9/11 terror attacks actually changed our world. They changed air travel. They changed how people moved between borders, how people looked at each other. It changed global economies as well. Then we've also actually witnessed the 2008 financial crisis. I myself, I passed out in 2006. I was actually lucky to pass out 2 years before, because 2 years later, people who were passing out, they actually had the worst hit. The banking sector had collapsed globally. They were not, the hiring from investment banks had actually tanked, and it was quite tough for a person to pass out in 2008. And then now we have 2020, where we are facing a crisis that the world has actually not seen ever in its existence. A flu like this, an outbreak like this happened about 100 years back with the Spanish flu, but the world then was a different place. And world now is much larger, much more interconnected, and with the kind of interconnections, the impact on the world is much, much more stark, okay? So what shifts in behavior is COVID-19 actually going to drive in millennials and Generation Z? First up, it is going to mean that people are going to spend extremely cautiously. What does that mean? That the millennials and Generation Z will not actually be in a mood to loosen their wallet. They're going to tighten their wallet strings. To give you an example, post the 2008 financial crisis, households that had millennials actually dropped their consumption and spending by 3 to 6%. And the COVID outbreak is supposed to be much, much more worse than that. So you can expect that spending power, disposable incomes, and what actually the millennials and Generation Z are going to do with their money is going to be extremely, extremely tight. Okay. Second thing that's going to happen is they are going to embrace virtual life much, much more. This webinar itself is a great example of that. Remember I said that these people are digital natives and they grew up using technology. they will use that much more now. Consuming via the virtual world will accelerate. Working, learning, playing, exercising, earning, eating, pretty much everything will start happening from home. The next big shift in behavior would be that the focus on health, the awareness about health, the focus on family, the focus on society is going to be that much more. So young people's health awareness levels is going to go up, and activism and awareness with causes will become stronger. You can see that immediate impact in the current protests that are going out in the world around racism. So people will identify with causes that impact societies and planets much more, and the response to these issues will be much more significant than you have seen in the past. What does all of this actually mean for businesses? What does it mean for companies? What should they expect going forward? Well, first up, businesses and companies and brands and professionals, they need to adjust to this rise in frugality mindset. What does that mean? Like I said, people are going to start spending a lot lesser. So brand managers, business managers need to relook at their business models. They need to relook at their pricing policy. They need to figure out how can they attract cash-strapped consumers to actually loosen their strings and still spend some money. You need to change the way your product offering and your services offering actually what they mean for the consumers. There is going to be a lot more focus on healthy living. There is going to be a lot more focus on ethical living. So how does your product or your company actually add value to people who are already looking to reduce their consumption? All businesses will now need to embrace digital transformation. They will have to go digital, and they also need to learn how to actually engage their consumers in the digital world, because it is not just enough to say we have moved our classes online to Zoom webinars. It's also important for professors, for example, to organize different types of webinars, different types of engaging sessions so that people come back and they actually engage. Similarly, it is important for businesses to break through the clutter. Everybody is going to go digital. So how do you actually stand out in this crowded space where everyone is going to go digital? How do you engage consumers? Businesses need to start planning for that. And very importantly, since activism and focus on the planet and the societies is going to increase, it is very important for businesses to value purpose over profit, because these consumers, the millennials and Generation Z, will be looking very carefully what are actually businesses doing. Are they making profit and just keeping themselves happy, or are they actually giving back to society? Are they helping governments or people or villages or facilities and institutions cope with this challenges that the world is facing? How sustainable are businesses? All this actually becomes much more important going forward. I painted a picture of what's happening to the world. I painted a picture of what is driving, or who the consumers are who are going to drive these changes in the world because of the pandemic. Now we will basically look at what are those trends that get impacted because of these shifts in behavior. Economy is going to get impacted because of Corona. Why? Because millennials and Generation Z people are going to change their behaviors. What happens when they change their behaviors? Trends. Mega trends, that are things that consumers want change, will also have an impact. What are the drivers that actually have a lasting effect on these different megatrends? There is going to be shifting economic power. We thought about the West, developed markets, Europe, where I come from, or US being as the economic superpowers. That is going to change. Asia, Africa will actually become the future, where that is where you're going to have younger population. That is where you're going to have much more consumption. That's where you're going to have much stronger economies going forward. So there's going to be a shifting economic power. There's also going to be a big drastic population change. European population is very old. They don't have enough set of millennials and Generation Z for businesses to actually cater to, which means businesses will look to younger countries, younger populations. There's also going to be massive environmental shifts and pressure. Companies will be much more focused on being sustainable businesses and how their carbon footprint is going to be. People themselves are going to be much more cautious about how much they consume, how much they travel, how much oil they use, so on and so forth. Technology is going to see a quantum shift. The usage of technology, how people adapt to technology. I can do a quick poll, I'm sure, with people here on this call. Nobody knew about Zoom before February. Nobody had even heard about this company. And now pretty much everyone is using Zoom. My grandmother also uses Zoom now. And things have really, really changed. And values are changing for people. From being more individualistic, thinking about just themselves and being very self-centered, people will start thinking about the planet, about people around them as well. Because they now realize everything is interconnected. If the planet is not healthy, I'm never going to be safe. My job is going to be at risk, right? So a lot of changes are going to happen. What are these megatrends? The first megatrend that I'll talk about is connected consumers. Connected consumers, meaning people who are connected to the world through the internet. Okay, there is going to be, like I said, a big impact in how this megatrend is going to change and affect things. The other megatrend that the world will be looking at is ethical living and healthy living. This become very important because of the focus on society, awareness on health levels, and also a microscopic lens that everyone is going to be put on companies and how companies actually operate, how economies operate, how sustainable are their practices. From a shopper behavior point of view, shopping is going to be reinvented. I'll be talking more in detail about it after a couple of slides. But how many of you have actually walked into a mall in the last 2 months? Not many of us. How do you think malls or cinema theaters are going to be once you go back? Brands and businesses now need to plan for this change because physical footfalls will reduce, digital footfalls will increase. This will also cause a shift in market frontiers. The market forces will change. The forces that actually drive supply and demand are going to change. The middle class, which is probably the most important class of people, most of the millennials and Gen Z actually fall under the middle class. They are going to be on a retreat. Retreat meaning they are going to really be extremely careful about how do they spend money, where they're actually going to be worried about where is money going to come from for them. So the middle class retreat becomes a very, very important mega trend that businesses need to follow and figure out how they can actually address that mega trend. Premiumization. Before the COVID pandemic, pretty much everyone was focusing on how do you massify your business and then how do you get value by premiumizing that business. So let's take the example of Uber or an Ola that most of us might have used. They first massify the business and then you have Uber Black, which would be a premium offering. You'll have Uber Go, which would be a more mass offering. Similarly, you'll have an Ola Prime versus a Ola regular. So businesses try to gain mass adoption and then they try to extract value by premiumizing their services. How does this change? Because like I said, people are actually not going to give too much value to premiumization because they don't have that much money to spend going forward. So this also is a mega trend that people need to look at very carefully. I will double click into some of the mega trends today and explain to you with examples of companies and also shifts in behavior, how these mega trends are impacting consumers, right? First up, this is a topic that I personally like to talk about a lot, and this, like I said, this webinar is an example. And the first megatrend that I'll talk about is connected consumers. Connected consumers use connected devices, internet connected devices, in order to experience and interact with digital content and access services. This is a growing phenomenon which primarily spread through developed markets first, but now it is also growing rapidly in the developing world. As of 2017, 45% of the global population used internet, and it is anyone's guess how it is going to be today. I'm guessing almost 70% of the world's population today would already be using the internet, and this would have gone significantly up in the last 3 months. So usage of internet is increasing. People are becoming much more digital savvy, and their participation in technology is increasing across the age groups. Schools have gone online, universities have gone online, businesses have gone online, everyone is working from home. Since people can't meet each other, family relationships have also gone online. Everything is going online. So this is ushering in a lifestyle change. So what does this mean? More time will be spent by people online. There is going to be a spike in online shopping, remote learning, working from home, and streaming entertainment services. All these will continue. Now, this is a permanent shift. This is not a temporary shift that just the pandemic is bringing. Pandemic has just accelerated this, and this is now going to continue even in the long term. Okay. I'll give you a couple of examples of how some businesses have had to adapt. Disney, the Walt Disney Company, which is arguably one of the largest companies in the world, entertainment companies in the world, their biggest business before coronavirus hit the world were their theme parks, their Disneyland, their amusement parks, and theatrical businesses. What happened with the COVID pandemic? Theme parks have been shut down, and the theatrical businesses is now at zero. No movies have released. So how does a business like this actually react to this? Luckily for Disney, they didn't know coronavirus was coming, but they launched their streaming service roughly 5 months back called Disney Plus. In India, of course, we've had Hotstar for much longer, but in just 5 months, thanks to the pandemic and the connected consumer megatrend, Disney has added 50 million subscribers just in 5 months. Okay, I'll put this in context. Netflix, which is the undisputed leader in that online streaming space, took 17 years to reach that number. 17 years versus 5 months. Let that sink in. Massive shift in how connected consumers are going to change the way businesses operate. Another interesting example, Europe is known for tourism. And because of the travel bans, because of the closed borders, there is no tourism happening. How does a country that is completely dependent on tourism react to this? The Faroe Islands, which are in the Nordic area actually, are extremely popular. You need to take a permit to visit these islands. These islands are extremely protected, and a lot of tourists come every year, and pretty much entire economy of this set of islands is dependent on tourism. Now there is nobody coming to these islands. What did they do? They actually introduced remote tourism, where the locals in the islands are actually going to hold GoPro cameras, and they're going to walk around, and visitors like me sitting in some remote corner of the planet will be talking to them and telling them through a WhatsApp call or through a Zoom call, telling them, can you please look to the right? Can you please look to the left? I want to look at that hill. Tourism has actually gone online as well. And that is one interesting example of how a government has reacted to try and keep the interest relevant for people, given this mega trend of connected consumers. The next mega trend that I'll talk about is the middle class retreat. Remember, I said that I'll talk about this a bit more in detail. It's very important for us to understand this particular mega trend. Why? Since the 2008 global financial crisis, developed markets, the middle class consumers in the developed markets, they've really struggled to maintain their economic status and position and lifestyles, despite incomes going up, primarily because the cost of living in developed countries has just been going forward. The debt levels have been high, even though the interest rates have been low. So consumption has been primarily funded by the government through government initiatives, through low interest rates, right? So originating from developed markets, this trend actually even percolates down into developing markets. Even countries like India and China, the middle class is really constrained right now in terms of their spending power. So the frugality has significantly increased, which means that people are going to spend for much lesser. And from moving to they were just before Corona pandemic hit us, what were people doing? They were basically focused on the sharing economy, Airbnb, Oyo rooms, these come and stay in a room in my house, these kind of the sharing economy. The renting economy was actually booming. The renting and sharing economy is actually now going to go down temporarily. Why? Because people are going to be worried about hygiene. People are going to be worried about what will happen if I use something that somebody else has used. So businesses now need to look at how this sharing economy changes. And thrill of the deal. Previously, people used to be bargain hunters. They were to look. They used to look at the deals, and a good deal would almost convince you to buy something that you really did not need. I know this because my wife shops a lot, just because it's a very good deal. But now that's not going to happen. There might be a very good deal, but people will be very careful on how they actually loosen their purse strings. Okay, so there's going to be lower disposable incomes. what does this mean? There's going to be a spike in thrift, meaning people will not spend much. People will hunt for access rather than ownership, and people are going to have very minimalistic lifestyles. An example, in the last 4 months, I've actually not had to step into the office. So I've actually not bought any formal clothwear because there's no need for it. So lifestyles will become much more minimalistic. People will start questioning, do I really need 4 pairs of shoes? Things will start reducing. I'll give you an example from the United Kingdom. Tesco, which is the largest retail and grocery chain in the United Kingdom, in the face of panic buying and stockpiling, they actually took a very interesting decision. They said, we're going to reduce our range of products. We are not going to have everything on our shelves because people are buying unnecessary stuff. And this means unnecessary work for us because we need to still get more trucks of products in. Our staff in the stores need to clean much more and sanitize much more. So they actually removed all the bargains and promotions, and they said, if it is really essential for people, let them spend extra money and buy. That way they actually managed to adapt to their supply chain to this spike in demand. But now, as the pandemic eases out and businesses open up, they will now have to figure out how they actually go back to this bargain economy because people are not going to have as much money to spend. So retail operators like Tesco, like Walmart, they actually now need to see how they actually add value to their own business and also to consumers. The next mega trend that I'll talk about is about how shopping is going to be reinvented. Remember I said connected consumers, people are going to go online, people are going to become technology savvy. Shopping is going to be completely reinvented. From physical footfalls, people are going to focus on more experiential. How do businesses actually get people to try on a product? Take for example, a car. Car dealerships are going to have a big change right now. You will be very worried to actually sit down and test drive a car. Do you know if the steering wheel has been sanitized before you get into the car? What about the other, the sales operator who's sitting next to you in the car, talking to you and giving you a demo of the car? Has he been tested for coronavirus? A lot of these questions are going to be in consumers' mind when they walk into a store to experience anything. And businesses, brand managers, marketing managers, sales managers need to now start thinking, how do I get people to experience this? One example will be how Volvo will now start giving virtual reality headsets so that actually people can experience sitting inside a car with virtual reality headsets. And there are going to be alternative models of business coming in because payments, cashless payment economy is going to go up. Multi-platform purchases will go up. People who focused on brick and mortar retail will have to move online. So shopping is going to be reinvented. The world is going to be a very, very different shopping place for all of us going forward. An interesting example that restaurants in Europe, the fine dine restaurants in Europe have done is they have now actually started offering gourmet meal kits. So people can't walk into a restaurant and enjoy a fine dine meal or even a basic meal because they're worried about infection. So what do restaurants do? They actually give you kits so that you can cook the same meal with instructions at home and recreate that fine dine experience yourself. Because takeaway will not always, if you have home delivery of food or takeaway of food, it will not always recreate the exact taste, the exact temperature, the right texture of food. So what do? They actually now give you meal kits where you can actually cook on your own and enjoy a meal at home. So businesses will have to start figuring out, packaging companies now need to figure out, how do we package these kind of products? We never really planned for this, right? So this will also change. So after having spoken about some of the megatrends, I'll try to sum up what we have learned and see what some leading companies in Europe, UK, US have actually done to respond to the coronavirus pandemic. The response from organizations can be briefly summarized into two types. Okay, the philanthropic response and the value-added response. The philanthropic response is the response where companies basically donate money, they donate products, they donate equipments or other resources to institutions or organizations. So they just make a donation. Okay, a value-added response is basically a kind of response where companies seek to add value to themselves, but more primarily to people as well. How do I actually help my customers cope with this kind of a pandemic? How do I make life easier for them? I'll talk about some brands in Europe. First up, the example from close to where I live, Finland. Valio is a dairy brand. It is much like Amul in India, and they have a wide range of products. And Easter is an extremely important holiday in Finland, where families and friends get together and enjoy a feast. But because of social distancing, families and friends could not get together. So what did Valio do? They actually set up a solution where families in Finland could get together online. They set up a table, and you can actually dial in through, say, a video call, and it will look like you're virtually having a meal together. And Valio created an online Easter table so that they're able to unite families and friends. Walmart in many key markets, for example, Mexico, actually introduced the Essentials price campaign. What did they do? They said that 25 items which are extremely essential for people to survive, we are always going to have them at the lowest price available. That means that they're going and telling people, we are not going to make a profit out of these 25 items. These are essential for you to survive, and we will give it to you at the lowest possible prices. They have had to redesign their aisles and cash out counters to ensure social distancing. They've had to put in membranes, plastic membranes, so that their cash counter clerks do not have any interaction with customers. So the design and the flow of people in supermarkets and stores, this is going to change, and a lot of redesign has to happen for businesses. When we look at philanthropic responses, this is to do with the megatrend. They're trying to address the megatrend of ethical living and healthy living. Unilever has donated more than $100 million in free home care, food, and personal care products. They've actually adapted their manufacturing lines to produce sanitizers for free for hospitals, schools, and other institutions. They've also rolled out financial support package for workers, not only in their factories, but their vendor factories, because a lot of jobs have been lost. The Volkswagen Group, which is a big European manufacturing giant, has a lot of car brands. In addition to donations and support to hospitals, what they also did was actually, they realized that, hey, car manufacturing has shut down. So they got their factory workers to adapt their manufacturing line and actually started manufacturing ventilators, which actually helps fight COVID pandemic. IKEA in the UK, very interestingly, IKEA is this big, huge furniture retail shop, as most of you know. And what did they do? They have a massive parking lot pretty much in each of their shops around the world. In the UK, they actually converted their parking lot into a testing center for NHS workers. And post the pandemic easing out and the lockdown being eased, they've actually had to redesign their shop floor, because they now need to sanitize a lot more. They now need to take care of their own workers and also their customers. So they've had to relook at how their business model operates. And L'Oreal, which is a very big cosmetics brand, they actually got massively impacted because people were not going out. People are not going out. What does that mean? That means people use cosmetics much lesser because they don't feel there is a need for cosmetics. You're not really dressing up for anyone since you're not going out. So how does L'Oreal keep business continuity? They realize, hey, we use similar ingredients and we have a packaging line. So let's start producing sanitizer. We will give a portion of our sanitizers for free to institutions, but we'll also sell these sanitizers because there is a shortage of sanitizer in the world. So this is a good example of a business reacting to a shifting market frontier and also the mega trend of ethical living. Okay. So I hope these examples of different companies has given you a good picture of how some businesses have reacted. Okay. As we sign off, I was actually told by your professor yesterday that these are the last 2 weeks for many of you students in your business school. So I thought I will sign off this presentation with, I'm not as acclaimed to give you advice, but some points that will help you in your corporate life, in the life that you have once you step out of the business school. First up, keep this in mind. What the world is going through today, nobody has gone through before. right? Students who are passing out, nobody in your senior batches has gone through a situation like you have gone through. So do not worry about getting success instantly, because it's going to take some time. Be patient for success. You are not in a race. You are in a situation that nobody has been in before. So do not look at how someone 2 years back, someone else in the family is doing, because you are not in a race. You are in a situation that the world has not seen before. Work with your life goals. Give yourself time. Okay. Don't just focus on career, but work with your life goals and try to look at the larger picture. Are you healthy enough? Do you have good relationships with your family? What is it that actually interests you? Do not worry about uh, career success or monetary goals immediately. Focus more about the larger picture. Keep building networks. It's very important for you to meet and talk to people from different spheres of life. Keep in touch with your batchmates, keep in touch with your teachers, your colleagues, because you never know when an opportunity comes out from a network. The world operates on networks. This is something that we don't realize when we are in a B school, because we are in a very protected environment. It only depends on who knows someone in a particular organization or in a company, and hence keep building those networks. It's very important for you to be ready to unlearn whatever you've learned. And I say this because the corporate world is very different from a classroom. A classroom teaches you basic concepts. It gives you confidence to actually operate in a corporate world, but it does not exactly tell you how a senior expects you to behave, how another colleague would react if you actually do something, right? How the business would react, how your customer would react, how a sales how a distributor would react. So be ready to unlearn. Always be ready to listen to people and be ready to unlearn. It's very important for you to cultivate a habit of increasing your awareness and knowledge. It could be by reading, or it could also be by spending more time online, getting awareness about the right topics. One interesting way in which I've actually found a lot of use in improving my knowledge is listening to podcasts. So look for podcasts. There are a lot of podcast creators who are actually giving a lot of information, good, valid information on topics across the world. And it's also very important, something that I sort of was trained by my parents by force, because initially I did not really cultivate a habit of saving. When you first get your first paycheck, you really want to spend it out. Try and cultivate a habit of saving, because it helps you plan for the unplanned, especially like this. Like 15 years back when I started working, I didn't know the world would go through a situation where pretty much everyone is looking at each other to figure out, hey, is your job safe? Hey, is your job safe? Do you know whether you're getting your next salary? This kind, nothing really prepared us for this. But cultivating a habit of saving will actually help you plan for these kind of unplanned setbacks and gives you that bit of cushion. Work towards identifying, tools and goals. It doesn't have to be a massive saving plan, but even any small amount, just cultivate that habit of saving on a daily basis. Okay. Right. Enough from me. I'll open the floor for questions. Thank you for listening in. Hopefully you've learned something of interest.